Nick, you are very welcome to another episode of Kickoff Sessions. I love the work that you've been doing over the last couple of months that I've been following. I love the work that you've done over the last decade or 2 decades at this stage. I'm fascinated by startups. I'm fascinated by the building process and really just doing things that are kind of personal. Personal projects are really where I get a lot of my kick from. So the topics of conversation today are going to be awesome, and I'm very excited to get into it.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Always love talking about side hustles. So let's get into it.
Of course, that's where your main focus is. So before we get going, if you want to give a little bit of a background into like how you kind of started this and really like what's been your last 20 years experience within entrepreneurship.
Sure. So I'll give you the short version of a long story. I started coding or taught myself to code when I was about 11 or 12. Built my first website around that time, and I'm 37 now, so that was back in the day, like 94, 95. And I come from South Africa, so back then I've done the research. When I started coding, there were only about 30,000 internet connected people in the country of 40 million or 50 million. So I was extremely privileged, and I'm well aware of that. In a country that has the highest Gini coefficient in the world, I know that I had privilege, so I'm aware of that. Then started my first business at 16. Can't really tell you why. I just wanted to do it as part of a school project, and the bug bit me. Then went on to study journalism, politics, philosophy at Rhodes, carried my tech into that world, and then left university having started businesses throughout university. One of them was a band. I was in a band that almost signed a record deal, and my lead singer quit and got a formal, stable job. And then got a job and built businesses and side hustles throughout, raised a ton of funding in my career, had tons of failures. Between the ages of 16 and 26, every business I started failed. That was 10 back to back to back business failures. I wrote my first book about that called Do, Fail, Learn, Repeat, which is basically how I lived my life for 10 years, is doing a bunch of stuff I didn't know how to do, learning a bunch of lessons, failing a lot, and then repeating all of it until I got it right. And then managed to get my first exit when I was 26. And then continued building businesses, had two more exits behind me. And now, when the pandemic hit, in South Africa, it was as brutal as everywhere else in the world, but we've got this inequality problem, and we have a massive unemployment rates, nearly above 50% now in South Africa of people looking for jobs can't find. So I decided that I've got 20 years of experience. Let me put it into a book called How to Start a Side Hustle, and let me help people with basic skills and my method of building a side hustle and integrating it into your life. That book became a bestseller in South Africa, and off the back of it, I've launched some cool stuff. The major thing that I did for the book was I didn't market the book at all. I didn't do any advertising, marketing, or promotion. I launched a nonprofit company called the Slow Fund and used the budget that I would have put into the book as funding for the fund. And what I do is every single day since February, I've been giving away my own money to help fund people's side hustles every single day. I also do 30 minutes of coaching with those people and have raised contributors, corporates in South Africa who have come on board to help extend the runway of that. So now we can basically fund businesses for the next couple of years.
That's insane. That's literally crazy because if you think about all the experience you've had to be able to pass this off to other people, it's a great opportunity for anyone to get involved with it. And I know you recently you just round and you brought in another investor, and that opportunity it's going to be great because based in Ireland, similar situation. And I think now is the time to start your own little side hustle, your side business, because out of necessity, we've been forced to. We see how unstable jobs are, and we can't rely on our traditional 9 to 5. And that used to be the safety net, whereas now it's your actual side business can be your safety net. But what has been really the reason why you've kept coming back? So you said you got bit by the entrepreneur bug, and that was something that I know beforehand as well. But you really came back through all those failures and even the exits. That's what surprises me the most is after this first one, the second one, what's brought you back out every time to still battling it out and starting new projects?
Blind stupidity. No, that's not absolutely not true. Look, for a long time, I did say to people, and I still believe this, lesser now, but when I was younger, I think you have to be a relatively broken human being to be a serial entrepreneur, because it's hard. And it's been glorified to the point where we all think it's fun and it's the easy option in life. And that's wrong. It's the profitable and wealthy option if you do it right. But I mean, the numbers are staggering. 85% of businesses fail within the first 18 months, and that is a global stat. Of the remaining 15%, a further 60 or 70% fail within the first 3 to 5 years. So it's rarely a punishment. It is self-flagellation on some level. It's sadomasochistic. And I understand that. What's kept me coming back is this insatiable obsession with solving problems and building things into the world. And I don't think that any entrepreneur worth their salt would disagree with that. It's not about the money. For a lot of entrepreneurs it is, but for most of us, it's about solving a problem. It's about fixing something in the world that we've seen or finding a gap and wanting to plug that hole. And that's kind of what's kept me going. And now as my career has evolved and as I get older, that's kind of shifted into, well, this is the skill that I have now that I've been honing for 20 years. How do I put it out into the world and help other people do that too? Because it's addictive. It's like getting tattoos. Once you've got one, you're committed and you're going to get more. Once you built one
100%.
business, even if it was a failure, you kind of want to go back and be like, okay, hold on. How do I fix that? What did I learn? How do I evolve? So that's kind of why I keep coming back, I think.
100%. I find, I have a similar trait as well. I haven't built 20 years of businesses, but my first company that I launched, ended in massive tears, and it was terrible essentially. But I always thought about how happy it made me when I was making sales for myself. And again, it was just a Shopify store, your traditional e-commerce store, but the value I was getting from making sales by myself was so much more substantial than any paycheck I was getting, which was always such an interesting way to analyze, So, from your own perspective, what would you advise people really as to why you would start something? Because let's say you're a graduate, you're a young guy or girl, sub 30 or after 30, and your 9 to 5 is putting a lot of pressure on you, just like my own. But really, what is the real value in kicking off your own work and actually owning it?
I think it's important that I say this upfront, and if you're listening or watching, it's important that you don't put too much pressure on yourself. This isn't for everybody. Some people do not know how to and will never know how to build a business, make a sale. They don't have that desire and that burn, and that's cool. I'm absolutely not here to promote the hustle culture, what Gary Vee calls hustle porn. I am violently against that idea of, I'm so great, I work 20 hours a day, I've got 17 businesses and you suck. It's not for everybody. It's okay if you just want a 9 to 5 and you just want to earn a salary. That's a good life. I do not advise anybody to become an entrepreneur. If you want freedom, if you want stability, if you want sanity, if you want time off, go get a job. Go get a well-paying career and work at it for 20 or 30 years. You'll be happier than if you're an entrepreneur. But with that said, I think that there's a fundamental difference between earning a salary and making money. Earning a salary, you are hired to do a job and you will get paid whether or not there is work to be done. You will be fired if the work starts to disappear. Cool. You'll be fired if you do that job badly, but it's not your job to make money. It's your job to complete the tasks laid out for you. What I do think is important is the ability to make money is something that nobody can take away from you. And that's a skill that everybody should consider learning and flexing over time. What do I mean by that, right? It's different to sitting in your cubicle and ticking boxes, or having a product that you go and promote on social media, or learning how to launch an e-commerce store, or learning the mindset that puts a business in your life so that you can continue to evolve. Those things are separate skills, and you might not want to learn how to build a business, and that's cool. But somebody could fire you tomorrow. Your business could go under. Your job might be made moot by the existence of technology. You will never lose the ability to be adaptable and resilient and learn how to sell and tell stories and talk to people about a product and get them to part with their money. That is an invaluable skill in life.
And if you think about it, it's a complete different world. The employee world versus the employer, or you're starting your own business. It's just a completely different set of skills. So even the basic level of copywriting, trying to sell your own product and being able to push it is just such a challenging, kind of step. So for people, or even like myself, what is your advice really when you're trying to get off the ground at the very beginning? Because I think that there's a lot of like opportunity there. You could see things online and think, okay, that's a good idea to launch this project, or I should launch this. But really figuring out what you are interested in and trying to take that step further is quite difficult, because I think what I didn't realize at first really was the severity of, okay, how long do I need to be committing to this? And when we were talking beforehand, we were saying, look, if you played a 10-year game, you're going to come out the winner more than likely, But, how do you pick something that's going to be within your interest for the next 10 years is a different question.
Yes. And so I run an online side hustle academy, and I coach a lot of founders and executives. And the thing that's important to remember when I'm dealing with all of these people is that everybody's desires and needs are different. And what you have to figure out is how you get started. That is unequivocally the thing that everybody I speak to, from the $10 million executive who's struggling to launch a new product to the first person building their first side hustle, is the start. And what we're really good at as humans is putting roadblocks in our way. Oh, I can't start because I need a business plan. I can't start because I need to raise funding. I can't start because I need the perfect domain, logo, website, whatever. What I try and do with people is get that shit out of the way and make a sale. So my online side hustle academy's entire promise is that if you do the work, it is very difficult for you to fail, because all I'm asking you to do is make one sale. One sale means you've got a side hustle. It means you've got a business. If you don't have a sale, you've just got a hobby. So what I need people to do is forget about what's the best thing to build for 10 years. Build something that you're interested in and you can sell to people. It's really that simple for me, because what we have as problems in our mental models is I need to avoid failure and strive for perfection. Those two things are incongruent, right? We need to forget about perfection. We need to suck at stuff so that we can fail a lot and learn lessons. I think I put out on social media recently that momentum isn't built by perfection. Momentum is built by being bad at something and starting. Once you start, you then go, oh, this is what I didn't know. Let me do it again and implement that. Then you go, oh, that was better, but it still sucked. Let me implement the next thing. And that's how you build momentum. What we get stuck on as humans is, oh, I can't talk about this publicly because the 5 words that I love the most are, what will people think? Like, what will people think? What will people think if I fail, if I suck, if I'm not good at this? Forget about that. Just build the thing you're interested in. And if you find a community of people that like what you do, they'll probably buy from you. But if you're striving for perfection, you're never going to get that out there. You're going to try and avoid failure and you're not going to learn any lessons. So my advice is, don't worry about what you build. Just build something and try and sell it.
Yeah, let's go a little bit deeper on that, because I completely agree. Like, more than anyone else the value of compound interest. And when you start and you improve on things, and especially even my podcast, started off, and I remember my first episode, if you want to have a laugh, go back and listen to it. And it was terrible. My guest was great. He was perfect. Me was terrible. But I remember thinking to myself, if I just stick this out, I can speak shit all day, and I'll get better at doing this, and I'll eventually get better to it. And I'll get to a stage whereby we'll have a core group of listeners, but I just have to stick true to shit, And I think it was easy to see for me, because I think I was like, look, I'm naturally okay at speaking and interacting with people, and I like doing it. But I think it can be difficult when you're not getting the response that you may need. And it's a form of validation, of course, but you really want to be able to stick through it, understand what you need to do, and then be able to go crack through it, And I think that's the value in it. It takes a bit of time to figure out that process, though, really, and figure out what it is you want to be able to scale up and actually sell.
Yeah, I think you basically summed it up really well. Consistency is a compounding asset. But it's one that, the younger we are, the less we understand its value. And this applies to your finances, your relationships, your businesses. Consistency is a compounding asset. The more you work at your relationships, your friends, your family, your partners, the better they will be. The more you save early on, the more that money will be later on. The more often you fail and learn, the better you'll be at adapting later on in your career. The crippling effects of perfection are the thing that hold most people back from trying. And social media has not made this easier. Everybody wants this perfect curated life. I am the opposite. I've gone in the opposite direction. If you follow me online, I'm honest. I'm honest about when I have a shitty day. I'm honest when I'm feeling burned out. I'm honest about the struggles and trials and tribulations. And in the next week or two, I'm going to be launching my own little side hustle that I'm building in public so that people can see what it's like. Because it's hard to pick a platform. It's hard to get things up and running. It's hard to make your first sales, and I'm probably going to fail. But actually, is that so bad? Is it so bad to fail? Why have we become so fearful of putting a step wrong? It's this really weird psychosis that humanity has accepted. Instead of going, failure is a literal natural part of history. We cannot proceed without failure. I've never met a successful person who has avoided failure towards success. It's not possible. Most of the successful people I've ever interacted with, literally from the Starbucks co-founder to the EA Sports founder to Mars.com founder to Ferrari racing drivers, they all acknowledge failure's role in their life, but ignore it as something they should avoid. Because you have to fail. They just see it as a learning experience, not an end result.
Exactly. And I think that's where you draw the line, and a lot of people find it difficult to get up and going because it's what will people think of me? But a good way to look at that is people will always expect you to fail, no matter what it is. If this is your side business, whatever, there's going to be someone that's in South Africa, sorry to say it to you, Nick, but it's going to be like, this guy's going to fail at what he's doing. It's not going to go well, So there's always going to be people on the counter side of the argument. And it's like anything in life, man. If you were to take, it's a stupid example.
I want to interrupt you and I want to disagree with that point. I want to help you and maybe everybody else understand something that takes me a long time to get into my thick skull. Here's the very hard truth. Nobody is thinking about you. Nobody is waiting for you to fail. Nobody considers your existence at all. And I'll give you the thing that really triggers for me. If you don't post your podcast next month, and if you don't post on Instagram tomorrow, or if you don't post on Twitter, does anybody contact you and go, hey, Darren, why didn't you post on Twitter? Are you okay? No, because they are not thinking about you. The absence of your tweets doesn't trigger them to think, I wonder if Darren's okay. Nobody is waiting for you. And in the nicest way possible, nobody cares about you. And that is a liberating experience. It should mean that nobody's watching you. If your enemies are actively waiting for you to fail, that's great. They're your enemies. You shouldn't give them any of your mind space anyways. And that, as a quick aside, is what I've recently come to know as the dichotomy of control from Stoic philosophy. You can allocate energy to things you can control or allocate energy to things you can't control. Where do you think it's best placed? On things you can control. And you can't control if people are waiting for you to fail. Because they're not. Nobody's thinking about it. So allocate your energy to the things that you can control, which is building a business, posting on social media, marketing yourself, selling, and you can control how you respond to what people say. You can't control what people say.
I love that because I think everyone's waiting to see what other people are going to be saying, throwing into group chats and whatnot. And you're taking ownership of it, you're taking responsibility because I am so happy with whatever I start failing as long as I've done my best interest. So like, as you said, I have a podcast coming out tomorrow morning. As long as that's coming out tomorrow, we have all our socials that are triggering off, the video's working, everything's working. And if it still doesn't work, so be it. I got a couple of things wrong, it's fucking could have been like a product market fit kind of vibe and it didn't work out. But if I just like sat there and was thinking, oh, well, maybe that's not going to work or this is not going to work, that's the wrong approach because you never know, you're stepping into the unknown and you don't know what the reality is. And it's so easy because the things you're talking now is talking through my own even like belief systems at the moment because I am thinking of launching different services in Q4, Q1 next year. And even though I was thinking it was a great idea, you're also thinking devil's advocate, oh, maybe it won't work. Maybe it's not the right fit. Maybe I could wait a little bit longer to get more experience. So what's your approach on really trying to find the right fit? So whether it's a category, niche, I started wide with my podcast, business podcast, and I went to kind of a fintech startups podcast, and I was like, no, not a good idea. Then I went down careers, and when I went down careers, that's when I really went balls deep. But I didn't go down that path till 30 episodes, and now I'm at 55 episodes nearly.
Yeah. I think this is why the consistency as a compounding asset is a really important principle. And I'll quote a variety of YouTubers on this one. MKBHD, Ali Abdal, they all say the same thing. If you post twice, 2 to 3 times a week, every week, indefinitely, within 3 years, you will have 1 million followers and be famous. And that's not because the videos are suddenly amazing or you suddenly find an audience. It's because you upload enough to gather data and learn which rabbit hole you need to follow. If you are only uploading once every 2 months, how do you know what the audience likes or doesn't like? It's going to take you 10 years to get the same amount of information back. If you are open and you're consistent and you're doing it right now and you just continue to do it, you're gathering information all the time. Like 30 episodes in, you can look back and go, okay, the finance ones work better than the others. Let's go with the finance podcast. And then you shift and tweak accordingly. If you only uploaded 1 episode in that year, how would you know what worked? it wouldn't work. So that's how I see this, is if you just consistent, you get better by the mere fact that you're constantly tweaking. You've lowered your ego, and that's a really big one, right? If your ego is huge, you think, oh, well, I'm amazing, I don't have to change anything. If you get rid of your ego, then the chances are you're going to learn every episode you upload. Every single thing you do is giving you feedback on how you should iterate and improve.
100%, 100%. And like you'll learn this as well. Well, you notice this yourself. Maybe, you understand the issues that you have as you're improving as well. And you think like, oh my God, like I suck at this or I'm great at this, and there's nothing more humbling than to listen to your voice continuously as you edit, as you create clips. And like you're a great speaker, but I nearly know for definite you weren't always like this. It's definitely taken you 10 years or 15 years to finally tune it. And I don't know, have you been listening to it as close as I've been listening to my own voice? But there are the slow burner things that you realize that, okay, it's only after time that I put time under the screen, time under the mic, whatever, that's where you get really kind of specialized. And you're like, all right, you know what? I have the confidence to take things up. I think confidence becomes really important to selling as well. Like, if I'm looking at pulling in sponsorships, I need to sell, the show, I need to sell my case.
Yep.
And I think you need to be kind of behind your own idea, because if you don't, I know it's kind of cliche to say, but if you don't believe in your own idea, then how are you going to get someone to buy your shit for you though, genuinely?
Yeah, there's so much to unpack there. The first thing is the word that comes to mind here is obsession. And I've got a recent example of this. So my career, basically what I do to earn money at the moment is I do speaking. So professional keynotes to corporates around the world. And I've been a speaker for 11 years as a paid speaker, but only over the last 2 have I decided to hone my craft. And this is the thing that most, I hate saying it like this, but most irrational young people don't understand is you don't hone your craft by working on something for 10 months or 12 months. It takes years to become an expert. I think the 10,000 hours idea has been debunked in science, but fundamentally I like the principle, because you should work at something for an extended period of time and obsess over how to improve all the time. So recently, about a year ago, I joined a speaking academy where you sit with a bunch of professional speakers and you learn to become better at what you do. Part of that is every single week we watch a new TED talk and we critique it. And we learn on what did that person do that we did like or didn't like? How do we improve upon it? How do we take those skills in? Mr. Beast, the YouTuber, he sat when he was 16 for 12 months apparently with 4 other YouTubers critiquing every day each of their videos, going, oh, what can we learn? What do we do better? What was good? What took off there? What didn't? Was this description right? Eventually, they became so good at doing that that they found the algorithm and started to work within it. You don't do that by just looking at one video and going, oh, that was fun. No, you pay attention, you hone your craft, you obsess, you become curious. Don't even get me started on curiosity. I'm literally writing a book on it, because it is the God particle of innovation. It is the thing that makes most interesting people interesting, is they are obsessively curious. And I think the key thing for me, and you embody this, is interesting people are interested. What are you interested in? That makes you interesting. So that's kind of how I see this idea of just pushing past the beginning and getting better at something.
And I think you made a great point as well about, pulling in the right people. So whether it's that dude on YouTube that has 4 people around him, taking that constructive criticism, and just feedback is just really, really valuable, I think. And that's where you drop the ego and you say, hey, I admit that this isn't going to be great, but I'm going to make it better. And I think that's what I tried to do a lot of time. I pulled in a couple of mates and was like, hey, just tell me what's wrong, because we all know we can do well at something, but we need a bit of practice, and I think maybe that concept of having a mentor, if you're starting a side business, is really important. A mentor could be yourself, of course, but really it could be someone who's been there, done that, and is there to lean on, I think, in times of need. And I think that's where we lift each other up versus I'm going to do this on my own, F you over there, I can do everything myself. That's the wrong approach, I think, with a lot of things in life,
Absolutely. For years, I've been saying that, I mean, it's not my saying, it's in business, though, it's important. The rising tide lifts all ships. You're not competing against your competitors. In the global world we find ourselves in, you're competing against your ability to be consistent. Like, there is enough marketing spent to go around. There are enough customers to go around. There's enough product for you to sell. So the idea here is bring people in around you that you want to be like. And I could talk for hours just on mentorship. I've never had a good mentor. I've never had someone be a specific mentor in my life. And I've met a lot of young entrepreneurs who think that a mentor is going to help them break through. it's kind of a crutch. If you can't find a mentor, my view is upgrade your friends. If you've still got your friends who are average and losers and drag you down from when you were 16 and now you're 29 and you can't find a way to get out of that hole, surround yourself with people you want to be like. Instead of finding the person in a Ferrari who's 21 and you hate them, why not knock on their window and ask them how they did it? Maybe it isn't a trust fund. Maybe they know something you don't know. Lower your ego, stop being competitive, and start being a sponge. Start trying to learn from the people that you want to be like. If you still have the same friends from when you were 18 and you're the same person from when you were 18, you have got a problem. You need to start leveling up your mindset, your friends, the people around you, your ambitions. Think bigger, surround yourself with people that you want to be like, and your chances are you'll move towards that goal.
100%. And the leveling up element just has to happen. If you're meant to go from high school to university to a grad program or whatever, even at that basic level, you should have a new, essentially surrounding of people, and then you can leverage into them and build off them. Obviously, if your core old mates or whatever that you may tap into at Christmas, going to go for a couple of drinks and stuff, but really the 365 days in a year should be spent around the correct people. You made a great point around young guys or anyone that's kind of got it kind of correct and got the revenue model correct. How do you think you should approach something like you want to start something that's your interest, but then you're trying to make sure that it's actually going to be profitable and generate enough revenue? Because, like a lot of things are going to be a slow burner, but at which point does it become, okay, this actually isn't a viable option? Is there some way you should really assess your idea in previous state? Or maybe is it best to just go down the route of this is my interest and I'm going to make this an exceptional pastime and monetize it?
Yeah, there's a couple of things on that. The first is I like to tell people about success and failure triggers. So a lot of people that I come across, whether I'm coaching or on my course, they've never considered what success looks like to them. Now, we all know what success looks like in 2021. The flashy cars, the million followers, the big watches, that shit is rubbish. Like that is virtue signaling on wealth. Like that there is research done that there is an actual financial number, and it's around about $2 million, where you're not really happier if you get more than that. And then sure, there's another level at $100 million. If you have 100 or you have $500 million, you are not happier. In fact, there is a tipping point that you get more unhappy and isolated and alone. So if you're looking at wealth as a way to measure success, you got a problem. So if you're considering looking at building a side hustle, I like to tell people to set your success and failure triggers. When you get £5,000 a month in revenue, you're happy. There's no need to scale. Don't freak yourself out. Or I've only got £5,000 to invest in this business. When I'm done and I haven't generated my first sale, I quit. Set yourself success and failure triggers and be vigilant. Tell other people what they are so that they can hold you accountable. Because the number one problem I see is I'm just going to put £1,000 into this. Oh, I'm so close. I'm just going to put another £1,000. And you've got the sunken cost fallacy where you're like, I just got to keep going. It's going to work. No. Success and failure triggers. When you reach them, either stop growing because you're happy or stop the business because you failed. It's perfectly acceptable to then start again. Then in terms of how do you know what the right thing is? Follow your interests, follow your passions, and extend the timeline of profitability. There are lots of variables to twist here, right? Either you want to invest a lot of time and money up front and you want to be profitable really soon, or you have no time and money to invest up front and you want to be profitable in a long time. Both acceptable, both depending on your context and circumstance, but just think about what they are. If you only have £1,000 and 1 hour a week to invest, then try and get profitable in 12 months. Cool. If you try and get profitable with that investment in 1 month, you're going to be angry and frustrated and you're going to quit because you haven't achieved success. But it's all independent and personal. As long as you are consciously thinking about what those barriers and boundaries are, you're winning. If you're just letting life happen to you and success for you is a fancy car and a fancy house because somebody else wants those things, then you're going to fail regardless of how much money you have.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've never heard someone think about like that, just the failure element of it, and really put that emphasis on. And just the words in my mouth, I was going to ask you about that next, actually, oddly enough. But how do you set those realistic targets? So like, it makes perfect sense, 5,000 or 1,000 for sure, 100%. But let's say I'm starting a side business. Let's say I'm trying to launch a consulting firm, and I know that I need to put in X amount of money, but I don't know how much I need really to get off the ground or to be successful. So how do I determine those success criteria so that it's actually going to be viable versus I'm shooting in the dark?
I think the genesis of the question actually needs to be, what does viable mean to me? Because
Mm,
my coaching side hustle, viable is 10 customers. I do not take on more than 10 coaching clients at one time. So in terms of a consulting, let's use my coaching as the example. When I started out, I thought, if I can't get one coaching client in 6 months, then I'm not a coach. That was my failure trigger. That was it. Then I got one in 2 months. I was like, cool, I'm onto something. If I can't get two in the next 2 months, then I'm going to stop. And then it just scaled from there. So it is very personable and independent in terms of your context. So again, don't think about what does success look like to the world for my business. If you only need an extra £1,000 a month in revenue, then that's your success trigger. When you get there, great. In terms of failure, it could be anything. And the worry that I have for most people is they never think about what it is. Failure for you might be, you know what? I want to have dinner with my family every single night. If you miss that for 4 nights in a row, you failed. Stop and reassess how hard you're working on your side hustle. You might say, I've only got 2 hours of time to invest in this every week, but I have no money. Great. I'm going to invest 2 hours of time for 6 months. And if I haven't made a sale at the end of that 6 month period, there's no business here. Like, it's up to you to then decide how true you were to what you set out, and if you cheated a little bit here and there, and if you want to push it beyond that. But be realistic and say, I only have X amount of time and I only want to make profit in X amount of time. Cool, that works. Just, it's those unrealistic expectations that break us.
mm. It's cool because you mentioned something there that I wouldn't have anticipated. It was the family reference. It's not all about money. It's not all about sales. It's actually about the impact it can actually have on your actual life and your career. And I've noticed that myself. You know, like if I'm working a lot, managing a podcast, trying to do edits and uploads and strategy and stuff, it just bakes into the price. And it's not to say that it's really difficult. It's just to say that it's consuming, you know,
Yep.
and that's the big thing, you know. How do you advise people to manage a side project, a side business with their straight up kind of 9 to 5? Because that's difficult to adapt to as well. How do you think that
Yep.
you made something great about, you know, 2 hours a week? If you can 2 hours a week, do 2 hours a week. Do you think there's
Yep.
another element of you know, setting up this success criteria of how much I need to invest per week in terms of time?
Yeah, I think the overarching statement for me when it comes to building a side hustle on top of your existing job is side hustles should be additive and not subtractive. Period. Like across the board. They shouldn't give you more anxiety and pain and frustration than they give to your life. They like it shouldn't work that way. If they are subtractive, you have a problem. If they take away from your family, from your income, from your experience of the world, then you should reconsider what you're putting into the side hustle, because your full-time job should pay your salary, should give you enough to survive, and then your side hustle should give you extra. It should be the gravy in your life. And I mean gravy in terms of experience, in terms of understanding and knowledge and money, not just the financial benefit. It's all of those things. So for me, that integration is key, and that's where realism comes in. If you don't have 1 hour a day to put into your side hustle, don't allocate that time, because you'll just be frustrated and disappointed with yourself, as will everybody around you. If you aren't
Mm,
communicating properly with the people in your life about what you're building, you're going to disappoint them, and then you're going to quit because you will not choose your side hustle over your partner. So it is just for me about being realistic. And again, it's those variables that you can turn. You can either put in 10 hours a week on top of your day job and not see your wife for 6 months, or you can talk to your wife and say, 1 hour a weekend, I'm going to work on this, and in 12 months, I'll be profitable. It's just about being realistic. Side hustles are not a cure to short term cash flow needs. If you think they are, you are wrong. That is not the
mhm.
way. There is no quick fix. There's no quick buck. There's no silver bullet. Side hustles for me are long term, sustainable, profitable entities that add to your existing income streams. If they are subtractive, you need to stop and reconsider their existence.
Awesome. I would not have thought about that. I actually think that's very unique as well, because people think hustle culture, Gary V shouting at you from the top of a building in New York to say, keep on going, keep getting deeper, keep on going, you know? And I think this is much more of a practical perspective to say, look, you know, it's not for everyone. If you do have the time, if you have an hour, give the hour, you know, and that becomes very
Yep.
valuable. At what point do you turn this into a full-time gig? Like, how do you make that transition? What is there that you should analyze to say, okay, I have this salary that I'm taking 50,000 USD, and now I want to transfer over to my full-time gig. How do you make that kind of transition?
The first question you have to ask yourself is, do you want to make that transition? Not every side hustle needs to become a full-time job that you turn into a billion-dollar business. That is, we've conflated startups and small businesses and side hustles. They're not the same thing. They need to be serviced in different ways and allocated to different lifestyles. In your early 20s, you should absolutely try and build yourself a billion-dollar startup because you have no responsibility, you have all the time in the world, you have all the energy. As you get older and you have more responsibilities, your side hustles maybe just need to tick your success trigger of earning you that £5,000 a month, and then you're happy. It doesn't need to become a full-time entity. However, if you do want to build a side hustle so that you replace your full-time job, I have some very firm and simple rules that you shouldn't waver on ever. The first is, do you want to run this business yourself? Because maybe you don't. Maybe you're a starter. I'm a starter. I'm not a scaler. I don't want to take a business from 100 people to 1,000 people. I'm out. That bores me. I'm not interested. Cool. So you got to know what you want out of the business. Maybe you want to start a side hustle and then hand it over to a partner who runs it for you while you take a dividend. Cool. That's great. No problem. Or maybe you do want to replace yourself in you replace your full-time job with this business. Great. Then you should have earned in profit 6 months worth of your salary before you make it a full-time job. I'm sorry, but that's aggressive. But in the world we live in, risks are very hard to take for full-time salaried employees. Too many people will jump ship from the employer and go, oh, this is too difficult. I'm sick of having a boss. I want to be my own boss. Being your own boss sucks. It sucks if you aren't making money. It's hard because you have to take leave on your own. But if you take leave, you don't earn money. So it's really important that you have a slush fund of at least 6 months of salary in profit in your business so that you can pay yourself if you don't make sales for 6 months. That is like the realistic situation here, right? Remember, 85% of small businesses fail within the first 18 months. If you can make it and you've got profit, then walk away from your job happily. That's great.
There's so much levels of different detail you need to get into before you can make that transition, and you need to see, is this a viable long-term play? Because just like yourself, you're not all going to end up like Nick and just essentially sell and move on. That's the difference, is because not everyone can really exit. Like, what experience have you had with exiting, and how has that kind of worked? Even because not everyone gets in that position 3 times.
Yeah, and I would argue that you shouldn't even be striving for that anymore. That kind of thinking is outdated in my world. I think there are enough customers, the world is global enough that you can just build a strong, profitable, recurring income business. But exits, look, if you have a profitable business, you can sell it. You can build it, you can bring someone on and run it. So your goal as someone building a business should always be become profitable. Don't raise funding. Funding is not profitability. Funding is a form of debt. Whether it's equity debt or financial debt, it's debt. And you pay it as a founder, whether it's to your investors and their time and board meetings and you lose control, or to a bank and you got to pay them back. So the best form of funding, exits, and profit business you can build is profit. Profitable businesses raise more funding, get sold more often, and attract more intelligent people to their business. So your goal is get profitable and then choose.
Awesome. Yeah, that's the way forward. Bootstrap away, even if it is something that's small. Take it on yourself, take the responsibility, and leave all the benefit and the drawbacks to yourself.
Yeah.
Because again,
and
it's
then choose, right?
Exactly. It's your choice. At the end of the day, you've chosen to do this. If you want to go back on it then and go back to your 9 to 5, that's okay. But I think having the right pillars in place is very important before you get into this leap. I think you're a perfect example.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree.
Really, Nick, I really appreciate it. I want to finish up here. I think this has been a fantastic experience for anyone that wants to start off. There's been so much food for thought for myself. And I think understanding these pillars, I'm definitely going to listen back to this session, several times. And I think for myself and many others, they're going to get a lot of pieces of information here that you would not find usually from the normal, get shit done kind of approach that's been pushed out so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And I do most of my thinking on LinkedIn. So just search for me, Nic Haralambous, on LinkedIn. And if you want to book me for a speaking gig, it's nharry.com. That's my website.
Awesome. And also your new course as well. So give you a small bit detail on that. How's that going?
Yes. So cohort 3 of my online side hustle academy is live. You can go to slowhustle.org to find my slow fund where I'm helping people build businesses for free, and you can contribute to that, or you can register to join my community. It is a limited members only community, and we're going to be expanding over the next while. But that is slowhustle.org.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Nick, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.